Hey there Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And if you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am an astrologer and I make videos all about astrology. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at retrogrades in the natal chart, because I'm sure you have a retrograde planet somewhere in your natal chart. Now, today we will be looking at Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn retrograde. And in part 2, we will discuss Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto retrograde. I will link that down below. I will link that video down below as soon as it is up. But before we do dive into today's video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the bell. And if you're interested in a personal reading, you can visit my website, hannahselsewhere.com. There you can also find my practical astrology ebooks and merch. All the links will be in the description box below. So with all of that being said, I do hope that you find this video to be helpful. Let's do this. Alright, so I made a couple videos about retrogrades in the past. I talked about Venus and Mars retrograde, both natal and transit. I'll link those videos down below as well if you haven't already seen them. But let's get into some other planets today. So firstly though, what does it mean when a planet is retrograde in your birth chart? Well, it means that the energy of that planet is being internalized. Instead of the outward expression of the planet, you will have a much more inward expression of it. Therefore, it will represent a part of your personality that is inward. I suppose you could say it's like the introverted version of the planet, perhaps further suggesting the parts of you that are more introverted. So on that note, what does it mean to be inward looking? Well, it means you're going to look within at your own thoughts and feelings. You're going to consider how you perceive a situation rather than looking to others. You'll look inside yourself for the information. You'll focus more on your own moods rather than seeking external stimulation. So for example, take the planet Mercury. Many people will have Mercury retrograde in their chart due to how frequently Mercury does go retrograde. And Mercury is the planet that rules over things like the mind, our communication, and how we process information. Therefore, if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, you're going to look inward when learning something new, for example. You'll consider what you think about a subject or situation. You might also think heavily about a decision, and you may also not think too much about other people's opinions in a discussion or conversation. Now, this is not to say that you're being rude. It's more that you're more concerned about your own opinions, and so you'll be thinking more about what your opinions are. And when having a conversation with someone, you'll be able to share great insight. This insight as well, it's going to come from a deeply reflective place. Though on the other hand, retrograde planets can also represent doubts, uncertainties, insecurities, and a bit of awkwardness. You might take your time when it comes to the energy associated with the planet that is retrograde. So for example, if Venus is retrograde in your chart, perhaps you take your time when it comes to love and relationships. You would rather get to know someone before jumping into a relationship. Perhaps you often doubt your self-worth, or you have uncertainty about your style or your beauty. Or let's say Mars is retrograde in your chart. Perhaps you have some self-doubt surrounding your sexuality. Perhaps you are uncertain of your wants and your desires, or maybe you are unsure of your potential. Or perhaps you have greater stamina and endurance. Now, the cool thing is that your natal retrograde planet may just go direct one day. Well, the secondary progressions that is. Now, I have made a video all about secondary progressions in the birth chart, so if you haven't seen that video, I will link that down below as well. I am linking all the videos in the description box today. We love to see it. So yes, it could very well be that your secondary progressed planets, they go direct one day, and when they do, the doubts, they may very well subside. The awkwardness may also lessen, or perhaps it's that you learn how to deal with these things a lot better, and also perhaps you are a bit more outward with the energy of that planet. So when your secondary progressed Venus goes direct, for example, you may still experience doubt and uncertainty in love, but maybe you are more willing to admit that to your partner, or maybe you are more open and honest about how you feel, or perhaps you outwardly appreciate yourself a lot more instead of continuously reassessing your self-worth, where you focus on yourself maybe a little bit too much. You actually come to a point where you say, you know what, I want to accept myself. Now, this is not to say that you change overnight, but there is a shift. And besides, having a retrograde planet in your chart can also come with its gifts and benefits. I mean, to hold back before jumping into a relationship can be a sensible thing. To refrain from exploding in someone's face when in an argument, well, that can be pretty helpful too. So with that being said, let's get into the descriptions of the retrograde planets in the birth chart. And just to clarify here, folks, the moon and the sun, they never go retrograde. Okay, so if you were born during a Mercury retrograde, you might be perceived as somewhat shyer within conversations. But I think this also depends on the sign Mercury is in. So for example, someone with Mercury retrograde in Cancer is perhaps going to be shyer than someone with Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Or perhaps you prefer to be quiet rather than saying something for the sake of saying something. If there is something you feel you want to say, you'll talk. But if not, you're good with being quiet. You also seek deeper and more meaningful conversations. So rather than talking about shallow things, superficial things, you want to go further and deeper. And you may also want to get to the point. Then again, there may be times when you are very chatty during conversations to avoid certain awkward silences. Or you might engage in small talk for the same reason. So whilst yes, you can share great insight in a discussion, insight that comes from a reflective place, like I was saying earlier, you can also experience times when you say things for the sake of easing tension. You might actually be very quick-witted and you might have a comeback for everything. You can be pretty sharp and you're always coming up with new ideas and you are very creative. Now, on the other hand, you may also go through moments where you remain quiet because you don't want to get the facts wrong, or you don't want to look stupid. You don't want to look like an idiot. You might even double check information just to be on the safe side. This can be great because it means you're interested in knowing the facts rather than sharing misinformation. Now, with that being said, it's also okay to be wrong. And it's sometimes your insecurities that can hold you back. And if you ever are wrong, well, that can feel like a big deal to you. Moreover, it can take you slightly longer to complete exams and any coursework. You might review your answers before handing in an essay, for example, which again can be great. Then again, some of you born during a Mercury retrograde might have a type of learning difficulty or a speech implication such as dyslexia, or you might lack focus and concentration, or it might take you longer to respond to someone in a conversation. Now, this is not to say that these things are bad, because at the end of the day, everybody learns differently, everybody communicates differently, and everybody processes information differently. Now, if you were born during a Venus retrograde, you might look within when it comes to love, relationships, and money. Perhaps you prefer not to rely on others too much. You might prefer to have deeper and more meaningful connections with others. And like I said earlier, you would rather get to know someone before jumping into a relationship. You truly value your connections and your bonds with others. And you also value the things that you own, the things that you have. You appreciate these things, and so you don't take people or stuff for granted. And when it comes to your money, you don't typically have this thing where you make hasty financial decisions. Perhaps you prefer to think things through a little bit more. Or maybe you prefer to have a solid plan. And if a way of earning money is working, you'll stick to it. Then again, perhaps this depends on the sign that Venus is in. I mean, someone with Venus in Scorpio will be a lot more fixed and consistent in comparison to someone who has their Venus in Pisces, for example. And when it comes to the relationship side of things, you possess strong moral codes, okay? Or perhaps you try to win others over with material items, but this may happen because you're unsure of what you have to offer without them. You might actually find it challenging to express your love and your affections for others from time to time, and at times as well you might feel like you're not good enough or pretty enough or smart enough and so on. You may possess doubts surrounding your beauty or surrounding your talents or your earning potential. You might even feel as if you are undeserving of love, and getting into a relationship can come with its difficulties, such as you feeling insecure within your relationships or lacking commitment. You typically prefer to establish trust first. You want to build on trust gradually. Perhaps you have been heartbroken in the past, or you've gone through a very challenging breakup or divorce, though on the other hand, perhaps you gradually learn to accept yourself. Over time, with getting to know yourself, you grow to have solid self-worth. And let's not forget how artistic you are. You might actually be very musical and fashionable and beautiful, and you're not big into people or things that are superficial and fake. You see people's inner beauty and you value people's inner beauty, and you really grow to appreciate your own as well. Honestly, you would rather be alone than in an unhappy and unfulfilling relationship. You would rather enjoy your own company than be around bad company. Now, if you were born during a Mars retrograde, you might be slower to act on things that you want or desire. Then again, you might have self-doubt when it comes to these things, and so instead of acting, you sit in uncertainty. And when this happens, frustrations can start to build, especially during times when you want to move but you feel stuck or directionless. Passive aggressiveness is also likely due to insecurities surrounding conflict and disagreements. You might prefer to step away from an argument, for example, rather than things leading to greater annoyance or possibly violence. Then again, when people do push your buttons or upset you, things can build up and then you might explode. You might actually bottle up your anger to the point where you can't take it anymore. Perhaps repression comes into the equation, and then this repression, so repressing your anger, it can come out in other ways. You might actually direct anger inward, leading to all sorts of internal battles and struggles. Yeah, these things can lead to all sorts of internal challenges that you might not share with others or open up about. Now, on the other hand, your slower movements and actions can also show how patient you can be, or how you prefer to have an action plan rather than jumping headfirst into situations. It might take you longer to act on things, but that can be used to your advantage. Perhaps this part of you equivalates to you making sure that all areas are covered. Not to mention, when you do eventually act, you have great stamina and endurance, like I was saying earlier. In fact, you might be great at training for a long period of time, such as getting ready for a sports competition or a sports event, or even looking at completing a fitness program, for example. You'll take your time with things, but you'll also keep pushing little by little. And you'll also have times when you reflect on your progress. And by reflecting on your progress, you become more aware of what you can change or adjust. Then again, perhaps this also depends on the sign that Mars is in. And also, you might go through periods when you have zero desire, zero motivation or drive to do anything, no desire to work out, no motivation to get outside, no drive to do something that you're usually passionate about. Therefore, you can go through moments where you feel the passion, you feel the energy, but then you can also go through moments where the passion just feels non-existent and your energy levels are really low. Like I said earlier, you might get frustrated with yourself, but perhaps it's important not to take your frustrations out on yourself. Remind yourself that you'll get there. You might be less self-assured and less self-directed, but when you get the wheels in motion, you are strong and focused and determined. And also, your instincts may just be very sharp. You listen to your gut, you pay attention to your energy levels, and you'll know how you feel when you're around certain people. So if you feel energized by a certain person, you'll know. Or if you feel tired and drained around a certain person, you'll also know. In fact, it's your sharp instincts that can help you navigate how you take action. And even looking at the sex side of things when it comes to Mars, you prefer to have greater sexual relationships, sexual connections and relationships that are deep and meaningful, where you do feel a genuine connection with that person. You need that strong physicality as well. In fact, being rough just might be what you desire. And you would also prefer not to compete with others. You would much rather just compete with yourself. So instead of focusing on others and what they are achieving, what they're doing, you'll be looking towards yourself, really. Yeah, you'll stay in your own lane and go at your own pace. Now, if you were born during a Jupiter retrograde, you might prefer to reflect deeply upon your own truth rather than looking to others. Now, having said that, you might also worry greatly about the future, or you might find it challenging to count your blessings or to count yourself as lucky. Maybe you often feel as if others are more fortunate, that they catch lucky breaks and you don't. Or maybe you think that others, they get many opportunities or more opportunities than you, but then you miss out. It's as if you get the shorter end of the stick. You might actually believe that you are unfortunate. And also, you might realize that you have to work for what you have. Things aren't just handed to you on a silver platter. This whole notion of catching a lucky break, you're like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. And I actually just want to draw from my own experience for this one, what a Jupiter retrograde thing to do. But yes, I have Jupiter retrograde in Virgo, and I wouldn't really say that I feel like I'm a lucky person. I can be pretty negative at times, though my Capricorn stellium does not help. And I can often focus on where I am unfortunate over where I am fortunate and blessed. I often struggle to see where I am blessed. I try my best to be hopeful about the future, to be optimistic, but then the realistic side of me kicks in. Then all my worrying just starts to take over, and then I spiral. And I freak out. I stress myself out. I become really, really anxious. I freak out about things that haven't even happened yet. I get too caught up in future events, and then I'm taken out of the present. But at the same time, I'm learning. And I still experience plenty of moments where I do feel blessed and fortunate. So yeah, if you do have Jupiter retrograde in your chart, perhaps you can relate in some way. And even if you don't think you are deserving of certain opportunities or blessings and so on, this doesn't mean you can't experience great things. This doesn't mean you can't expand or grow. And maybe there is something to be said about your inner growth. In fact, you might have a very expansive inner world. You have so much knowledge that you are so eager to share with the world. Perhaps it's okay to keep some knowledge to yourself. I mean, there's only so much you can share. There's only so much you can do at once. So instead of becoming overwhelmed by all the things that you want to share, or that you can't share, be okay with knowing that there is only so much that you can share in this lifetime. In this respect, it's great that you are continuously learning and growing. Also, when it comes to different theories and philosophies and religions and ways of life, you prefer to find out your own answers. You might still ask for advice and help from spiritual people or from mentors and teachers, but at the end of the day, you prefer to think for yourself. You will reflect deeply upon what your beliefs are, and when you go to share your truths or your beliefs, you might doubt that others will understand or listen. You share knowledge based on your own experiences and studies, but you might not realize how others resonate with it. Perhaps you assume that others won't get it because they can't possibly understand as much as you. Yet, maybe they are willing to listen. Maybe they want to hear what you have to share. And besides, them understanding things isn't really for you to decide. Though what I will say is that you are great at learning from your own experiences. You can reflect upon what you have done or seen, and you can gain great wisdom from these things, from those times. And also, it's great that you listen to your own moral compass, you listen to your inner guidance when it comes to things like philosophy or religion and just belief systems overall. And sure, there may be times when you feel hopeless and somewhat more negative, but there can also be times when you feel very expansive and excited about the future. Times when you are bursting with all this desire to teach and share. And lastly, if you were born during a Saturn retrograde, you might reflect deeply upon your commitments, your long-term goals, and your accomplishments. There is a strong sense of duty and dedication and responsibility that you possess. But at the same time, you also possess great fears and insecurities about these things as well. You might actually second guess your potential and or your accomplishments, or you might not look at the things that you have achieved in a successful way. Instead, you might focus on achieving greater results. Now, don't get me wrong, this can also be great because it shows that, you can always do better. And you know this. You are continuously wanting to strive for more. You're very, very ambitious in this way. But there can also be times when your fears and your insecurities can take over. Times when you put yourself down, times when you are overly pessimistic and hard on yourself, times when you should really be building yourself up rather than tearing yourself down and being your own worst critic. And then the thing about this as well is that you might have this thing about you where you are pushing so hard to live up to your father's expectations. You are fighting diligently to show him that you have your life in order and that you are achieving great things. Now, some of you might not have had a good relationship with your father. Perhaps he was absent growing up, perhaps he was working a lot, or maybe he was very cold towards you or very strict. There was a lack maybe of that fatherly bond, or maybe it's that you lacked structure or boundaries or discipline growing up. Or maybe you realized how much your father lacked these things within himself, and so you pushed to have these things. Maybe he lacked integrity or commitment. He lacked a backbone. But you want to have greater discipline. You want to have greater integrity and dedication because it wasn't present, or these things weren't present growing up. Though following on from this point, no matter how much you try to live up to your father's expectations, perhaps subconsciously, might I add, it's never enough because maybe he never notices. He doesn't give you that recognition that you're looking for. And so therefore, perhaps something you come to realize is that it's about cultivating recognition and success from within. And you grow to do a great job, especially the older you get. The more you mature and grow, the more you realize your potential. Not to mention, you might actually learn from the mistakes that your father made or from the mistakes that your parents made. Though I also want to add here that the expectations that I just mentioned there, well, perhaps you try to live up to the expectations of your parents overall. I just wanted to add that there as another possibility. Then again, some of you might decide to follow in your father's footsteps. Moreover, when it comes to career changes, you're going to take your time, you're going to really reflect on these things, and you're going to want to do an excellent job. You might take your career very seriously, so much so that you might become defensive when others challenge you within your career or when others try to put you down regarding your career. In fact, you might worry that others won't take you seriously. Not to mention, you can also go through periods where you fear taking responsibility. And I suppose this is why you prefer to take your time. You need time to reflect upon what your responsibilities entail, what they will require of you, and if you can live up to those things. And it's really important to you that you follow through with your commitments and your responsibilities. And if you don't, well, you can feel like you are letting yourself and others down. And I'll also say that you prefer to be your own authority and disciplinarian. You know what you are responsible for and who you are responsible to. And if others challenge that, you most likely won't stand for it. And when you want to work for something long term, you will do it. Sure, you might need time to plan and think things through, but once you're in, you're in. It might take you years to achieve the thing you want, but you will get there thanks to your inner dedication and strength. Okay then, Cosmic Warriors, so that concludes my video on retrogrades in the birth chart, part 1. As I say, stay tuned for part 2. Though please let me know if you find this video to be helpful. I would really appreciate that. And as always, let me know your thoughts and your opinions today. Now, with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And of course, if you would like to see more videos from myself and you have not yet subscribed, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and also give this video a like today if you liked it. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye!